Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Banter with Oye, and yes, we are still reviewing the book by Maxillian. And today we'll be talking about the GOC, General Commanding Officer Aguiyi Ironsi. Last episode we talked about, all the officers and military leaders that were off. But in all of this, where was the GOC? How come he was not impacted by this? What happened to him? What did he do? Now, if you remember in the previous episode, I was telling you that Brigadier Mayo Malari was having his wedding, and the plotters had to attend it just so that they don't raise any suspicion. So again, the GOC was also at the party. But where did he go to after the party? He went for an after party. Party after party. Anyways, he went for another party at Apapa Wharf, and believe me, that's what saved him. My mom used to say, "Believe me, you." Feel like I'm getting very old. Believe me. Anyways, so the GOC, Aguiyi Ironsi, was at another party enjoying the life of his age. Whereas in his house, the majors that were planning the coup, particularly Major Chukwuka, went to his house. And when they got to his house, they met the head of his security officer and they were like, "Hello, we are here to take over from you." And the head of security officer is like, "From who? At what time? At midnight? You want to take over my own position?" Back and forth, back and forth. The head of security was like, "No, this is not working." So they had to turn away. Now, at this point, finally the GOC was back from his party and he received two calls. One was from the Prime Minister's residence, and the other one was from Palm's residence, Lieutenant Colonel Palm's residence. At this point, he's been aware of the arrest of the Prime Minister and Lieutenant Colonel Palm. The person that arrested Colonel Palm was Major, also the person was the man that visited the GOC's house, Major Chukwuka. Major Chukwuka was one of the people that, when he was arresting Major Colonel Palm, he promised the wife because the wife knew, Palm's wife knew Major Chukwuka because Major Chukwuka was always in their house. So he promised Palm's wife that nothing would happen to her husband. Anyways, it's safe to say that, or I should say that Major Chukwuka, even though he was part of the coup, he was one of the coup plotters that said he wanted a bloodless coup. Now, Lieutenant Colonel Onegbe and Colonel Kor Mohammed were also accosted by their own. Colonel Onegbe was offed in front of his wife. Now, Onegbe was the only Igbo military officer that was offed at this point. And people always say that Onegbe's offing was by mistake and it was because he wasn't giving them keys to the armory. But you have to remember that the plotters went to his house. They were already armed before they went to his house, right? And Onegbe was in charge of procurement for helmets and uniform. So the connection between him not giving them the keys to the armory is only to, further buttress the point that the coup was an Igbo coup. But then if you think about it, that's not the case. The real reason why Onebe was off was because he had close relationship with Brigadier Maima Larry and he wasn't participating in the coup in itself. Aguiyi received these calls. After he received two calls from the Prime Minister's residence and Colonel Ko's residence, he called the federal guard to alert them and he told his guards not to let anybody in. Now, by the time Major Chukwuka would come back to the federal guard, everybody was already hostile towards him, and then he had to tell Ademoyiga, his partners, that it was like the GOC. I started fighting back over because these guys were very, very hostile towards me. Between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., we then went to the Lions building at Obalende. Fortunately for him, Ademoyiga had just left a few minutes before. At this point, he met two officers there. Those two officers were planted there at Ademoyiga. When he questioned them, Ademoyiga is also part of the coup plotters. Now, when he questioned those two guys that were planted by Ademoyiga, they didn't respond to him in the way he liked. So he sent them back to the barracks. That go back to the barracks. He wasn't satisfied, and then he left. Now, when he was leaving the Lions building, when he got to Carter Bridge, there were also coup plotters planted there. Those ones were shocked to see him alive because he was supposed to be taken off at his house by Major Chukwuka. So those ones saw him and they were like, "Oh, put your hands up, we're going to arrest you," and all of that. But again, it's the GOC. They are actually scared of him. So he was able to like bully them and say, "What do you mean? This one, that one, that one." Then he bullied them such that by the time he was leaving the checkpoint, they saluted him. So now Agoye had was fortunate three different occasions. First at his house because he was partying. That doesn't mean you should be partying. Not everybody can be that lucky. But then the first one he missed it because he was at another party, another after party. Second one was because he missed when he got to Lion Building. Ademoyega had just left, and then thirdly was on Carter Bridge when he saw some of the coup plotters. So now he has escaped death three times. Now let's go to Ikeja on the mainland, second battalion on the mainland. When Aguiyi drove to the headquarters, he called everybody, the RSM, he rang an alarm basically, and all of the officers started turning up. Particularly, there was Major Onjoku. And when Major Onjoku came, Agoye actually pointed a gun in his head, pointed a gun at his head, saying, "Are you with us or you're not with for us?" And Joku had a hard time convincing him that he is not part of the coup plotters. And at that point, some other soldiers came to to the barracks at that to the Ikeja battalion at that point, and it seemed like most of them already heard about what's happening overnight because for them to drive down at that hour of the morning, it means that people have already started hearing about the coup. Now, my Malari is dead, Koi is dead, Lagema is dead, Pam, all those four people are dead, leaving only Lieutenant Gowon as the most senior surviving Northern officer in the Nigerian army. Now, according to Joku, according to Joku, GOC was very agitated and just kept muttering his breath and he was scared, he was shaking. Anybody would be scared if that kind of thing is happening under their watch. So, but once he gained his composure, he gave an order to arrest Major Ifejuna, Captain Oji, and all the other people that were involved. If they are unable to arrest them, they should off them on site or arrest them. Back to the Federal Guard barracks in Lagos. At the officer's mercy was a mess because the plotters, Major Ifejuna, Ademoyega, Anoforo, Chukwuka, and Okafor, they met with their captives, the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, Colonel Core, and Lieutenant Pam. When Chukwuka arrived with Pam, Anoforo was so unhappy, like, why would you bring him here? And now Chukwuka, like I said, was one of the, coup plotters that said he didn't want any bloodshed. And he explained that he promised Pam's wife that nothing would happen to her husband. And Ofra was like, I hear you. And off there and then. Interesting thing is, Pam and Anofro served together at the Tiv uprising as colleagues in the HQ. So it's like Anofro is like, apparently it was the most brutal amongst all the coup plotters because he took out Lieutenant Colonel Pam Onegbe, Colonel Kor Mohammed, the finance minister. So it was like, couldn't be bothered. Now moving to Apapa, the second brigade HQ at Apapa. Now, early Saturday morning, the news has spread. Everybody has heard about the events of, the coup and all of that, and all the officers were irate. They were visibly upset, and these senior officers they started interrogating everybody, like officers that were supposed to be at point A, but they were not in point A, or you were in point B instead of point C. They were interrogating everybody with a lot of, torturing them left, right, and center to the point where I think it's Major Muitala Mohammed actually held people at gunpoint during the interrogation. I've never really, I don't think torturing is like the best way to interrogate people because for someone like me now, with one punch, I will cast everybody. We are all casted. You don't cast that. Like yes, there are a few people that they were trained to withstand torture and they will not talk, but not everybody is built that way. So I don't know. I don't think torturing is the right way to get answers from somebody that you're trying to get information from. If they really, especially when they do not even have the information, so you're just beating shit out of them. Like at this point, while all of this was going on, they were just concerned about, how can we ensure that this thing we stop the counterattack. Nobody was talking about, a military government at that point. Agoye gave orders to take over the broadcasting places, all the places that the coup plotters are taking over. And we gave orders that everybody should go and take it over. Now, counterattack itself it had its own drama. First, there was a Lieutenant William Welby who was part of the officers that were, doing the counterattack. He was arrested by another group of officers that were also part of the counterattack, but he was able to he was released thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Gowon. Now there were two soldiers. One was south and the other one was north. They were under another major, but they kept arguing about their method of um operating, or how they were going to operate, back and forth, to the point where the northern soldier shot the southern soldier. I feel like if the coup plotters themselves could have seen what this, particularly Cardinal Isyogo, if he had seen what was going to happen and how much division the coup would even cause, even further, I feel like he wouldn't have gone through with it, because he was someone that truly, truly hated tribal bigotry. So, but the only thing the coup ended up doing is causing more divide amongst tribal line. Is that correct? I think so. Anyways, now in Abeokuta, the western region, once the plotters realized that Aguiyi was in town and he was mobilizing people and all of that, they all began to flee. They ran away. Only a few of them were brave enough to return to Lagos. And when they got to their location point, they realized that had been taken over by troops that were loyal to the GOC. And at that point, they are taking over a lot of, all the positions. So there was really nothing they could do at that point. Um, and so by morning, all of them were either like driven out of Lagos or they were already arrested. Now in Enugu, the coup attempt was made in Enugu and Benin. Major Ifejuna had sent like orders to the first battalion in Enugu, asking them to deploy soldiers. But those ones were kind of confused as to what it was. So it took them hours to even act on the order. These soldiers finally, when they finally went to, the premier of the, when they finally went to the Igbo premier's house, Dennis Osadebe, they put him under house arrest. But it was particularly that it wasn't off because it was with the head of state of Cyprus. So it was immediately the head of state from Cyprus left that he was placed under arrest. But some people say that the lieutenant that was attached to him for the coup was one of those that said he didn't want to shed any blood as well. So that's the reason why he wasn't off. Now in Enugu, there was a radio broadcast and the military guys entered, and the the broadcasters had to see on live that they were being surrounded, that they were surrounded by, you know, military people. As a result, people in the east thought that, the federal government had and launched a military crackdown on the eastern region. Next is the Kano northern region. There, the commanding officer of the 5th Battalion was Lieutenant Colonel Ojuko. Even though he wanted to end the MPC government, he wasn't in favor of the coup. So when he received the telegram informing him about the coup when he was on the parade ground, immediately Baba disarmed all the military officers, took all their guns, locked it in the armory, and then took the key and sent it to one of his relatives in the far in the village. And then he went to meet his friend, the Emir of Kano, Alaji Ado Bayero. It was reported that his friend told him what's happening, and the two of them went from street to street to calm everybody down. And then he even offered the Emir, he gave the Emir protection. Then in Kaduna, Major Kaduna Eziogo was in full control, and he didn't have any problems that the people from the Lagos or Ibadan were facing. He didn't have any of those problems. He had fully taken control. And on the afternoon of January 15, 1966, Eziogo declared that the revolution aims to establish a strong, united, and prosperous nation free from corruption and internal strife. Now, in his broadcast, this is what he said: "Our enemies are the political profiteers, the swindlers, the men in high and low places that seek bribes and demand 10%. Those that seek to keep the country divided permanently so that they can remain in office as VIPs and ministers, at least. So that they can remain in office as ministers or VIPs at least. The tribalists, the nepotists, those that make the country look big for nothing before international circles, those that have corrupted our society and put the Nigerian political calendar back by their words and deeds." Nigerian calendar is still back. by words, by deeds, by video, by people collecting money on camera and putting it in their pockets. Everything is just in our faces now. So I feel like if Major Cardinal Eziogo had known that it would get worse, he probably wouldn't have done that. Probably wouldn't have been a part of the coup. Maybe the coup would have still happened. But I feel like a coup would have been inevitable at that time because during that era, a lot of countries were doing this, in Africa at least, were fighting back and trying to get their countries back in one way or one form or the other. So it made sense. If they didn't do the coup, another group of people would have done it one way or the other. But it hasn't helped. We are still where we are today. Uh, Personally, I don't know how Nigeria can be better. God bless Nigeria. However, I don't know if anything can be done to help the state of our country. We'll just keep hoping for the best, I guess. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.